Dear students, let us start the discussion on 24th February 2016 newspaper, The Hindu. Now, a small announcement for you. I have started the Indian Express discussion for you. So, the length of the video will be increased beyond 15 minutes if I include both the newspapers in one single video. So, I'll make a separate video for Indian Express and I'll try to deliver it by evening. Right, or afternoon or evening based on my convenience. But Hindu, as per the schedule, it will be delivered for you. For Indian Express to take a certain systematic approach, it may take some time for me. But however, by evening I will try to deliver the Indian Express for you as per the existing standard. Now, coming to the first article, it is about Zoya Hassan talking on the nationalism and the character of Indian nationalism. Now, the right-wing nationalism or right-wing nationalists, they prescribe a particular format of nationalism which is based on religion and ethnicity. On the other hand, when Indian nationalism and its debate has started, the nationalism took diverse of the characteristics, and nationalism is said to protect or is meant to protect unity in diversity of the country. So that is the reason why Indian nationalism is more based on civic rather than the ethnic identity. And Indian nationalism flows from the pluralistic character of Indian society. So if I link it to the Pranab Mukherjee's yesterday's speech, what he said is, we are guided by the highest ideals of the human race, Satyam Sivam Sundaram. So these factors squarely fits into the idea of India and Indian nationalism. So a parochial exclusivist nationalism centered around a religion and a religious identity or particularistic identities that is going to make the idea of India very narrow and also parochial or also unconclusive. So in this case, further to this, the democracy and debate, democracy and dissent, these are the critical parts which cannot be separated from each other. If you take recent JNU agitations and crackdown on the university, the first thing is, it is a state interference in the higher educational institutions. And the higher educational institution is expected to be a place of dissent and critical thinking which can question the existing patterns of living in society. And government failed to understand this particular emotional oralism, this particular critical aspect. And on the other hand, the crackdown is also to bring in a fear and a pattern of pushing Hinduism across the universities or a single notion of nationalism across the universities. And on the further to it, universally, ultra-nationalism and ultra-nationalistic thoughts, these are the reason for humankind, hatred among the humankind and also suffering of the humankind. Now, if you take about Mussolini, Hitler, all these are the preachers of the ultra-nationalism. And coming to India, Pakistan, now Pampur and next is Pathankot incidents. These are giving certain critical lessons to India. So in this context, does India need to engage with Pakistan or not is the question. Now, if you see in the last 1.5 months, you had the Pathankot incident followed by the Pampuri, now which are the two terrorist incidents, and David Headley deposition against the Pakistan and the ISI. In this case, the deep state or the Pakistani establishment promoting the terrorists as a state policy, as a state craft, the entire world knows. But however, the fight against the terrorism is always parochial to the interests of the West. So there is no comprehensive action plan to fight against the terrorism, and the terrorism that affects the West is seen as different from the terrorism that affects India. So in this context, India on and off approach towards engagement with Pakistan, it is not serving its purpose. Ultimately, it is turning back to India, saying that India has to engage with Pakistan, or the pressure on India from the global community is increasing, shifting the focus away from the terror activities of the Pakistan. And second, lack of this consistency is giving impetus for the non-state actors to influence the decisions among the two countries. Lack of communication channel is making the situation much worse. So in these conditions, the solution is only, or the way forward is only engagement. So the SAARC summit, which is about to come up in Islamabad, as promised, the Prime Minister Modi shall move forward. Coming to the Pathankot incident, certain serious security lapses are exposed in India. So, the previous articles have suggested for India shall have a security action plan for itself. And coming to the deep state actors, Pakistan, depending on the deep state actors, is going to do more damage to itself in the long run. And Kashmiri. Now, after the death of Saeed, the PDP and BJP alliance is almost at the verge of breakdown. So, in this context, lack of democratic forces is giving space for the alternative forces to grow, and it is making the situation much pliable in Kashmir. So, in this context, the Modi has to create the space for the democratic debate over there, and also has to engage all the sections. And the direction for this is none other than the Vajpayee government's insaniyat. And this insaniyat, if applied, then integration of the Kashmir with India becomes much easier. Coming to the debate between Apple and FDI. Now here, in the context of India, how this debate can go up, it is like this. Most of these MNCs, they are based in the West. Now, many of the Indian laws, they do not directly apply for these MNCs because they function through the subsidiaries in India, and these subsidiaries, they are only involved with administrative and financial actions. But however, protection of the intellectual property, software, etc. is guided according to the laws of the place where these are established. For example, Apple is registered in California, so it is more guided by the laws of the state of California and United States of America. Now, for example, the section 69 of the IT Act, which provides for the authority to the law enforcement agencies to access the sensitive data against the privacy of an individual. But it is violative of the California law. So this makes Indian law enforcement agencies inability to access the information from the Apple. So compliance, whenever the Indian government asks for the data to these MNCs, to what extent they are compliant to it. If you compare Facebook's compliance for United States of America and India, it is very much for US when compared to India. The reason is this. Basically, it is a company registered in the United States, and so the compliance to the laws over there will be generally high. So in this context, when they are operating across the world and influencing the population across the world, and when the terror, etc., these are spreading across the world, how the developing countries have to deal with it, these are the questions for the regulatory agencies in the developing countries now. Now, in 2002, there was a controversy with regard to the Blackberry phones. So, with regard to encryption of the Blackberry phones. Now, this debate is still continuing and encryption is becoming more and more stronger. So, how the national interests, security interests have to be served against the privacy interests of the people, this is a debate for now. Coming to the clean air. So, the urban areas in India, they are much worse than the Chinese cities. The air quality index, which has been measuring across 23 cities as of now, that shows the dismal state in India. So the particulate matter, which is less than 2.5 microns, so is very high and beyond the dangerous levels in India. So in this context, how we shall handle this situation? Now, first identify what are the sources for this. The diesel cars and construction and demolition activities and the thermal power plants. All these are the sources of the particulate matter. So in this case, the strengthening of the public transport system, a replacement of the biomass with the solar cookers, providing for alternate sources of the electricity, all this can improve the air quality in the cities. Ultimately, the demand for the improvement of the air quality has to come from the citizens. And in the process, the citizens are also expected to make certain compromises in the terms of use of personal vehicles, etc. So the greater transparency and assimilation of the data to show the effects of health, effects of this pollution on the health and productivity of the workforce that can enlighten the citizens and also provide an action plan from the government. Now coming to the debate. Now if you see in the last parliament session, most of the days are wasted with regard to the dissent. And this waste is much higher in Rajya Sabha, and Rajya Sabha's relevance also has come into question. So in this context, the President Pranab Mukherjee's words that the democratic temper calls for debate and discussion and not disruption or obstruction has to send a strong message to all parliamentarians. Added to that, the human spirit has to be guided by, or the nationalism has to be guided by the human values. This includes Satyam Sivam Sundaram. So this also sends a strong message to the ruling regime that the ideals of nationalism are not guided by a particular religion or exclusivist tendencies, but to the inclusion of the entire human race and collective growth of the human race. And further to this, to avoid the disruptions in the parliament, certain mechanisms were suggested in the previous session. For example, giving some space or certain days dedicatedly for the opposition. So raising the issues of the opposition, it will automatically give them their voice in the parliamentary house. So, along with this, and most of the personal reasons at the centralized level of the politics or high command level of the politics. So these are the reasons for the disruptions. So internal democracy of the political parties will also decrease the disruptions. This is what has been given previously. And coming to the Pakistan, I already covered this issue. The next, going through the Brexit. Now with regard to this Brexit, after the Grexit, now it is the Brexit, the Britain exit from the European Union. Now in this context, the Prime Minister David Cameron, what he was talking about. Now, integration, the greater integration or else ever closer union, these are the terms which are guiding the European Union. So the Britain objects to this or objects to any other political integration, and it wants to have the right to keep itself away from the political integration further. And benefits. With regard to the worker benefits, there are two terms used over here. One is welfare tourism and the next is emergency brake. And in this case, what the Cameron was suggesting is this. So there has to be a hold on the welfare benefits which have to be given to the immigrant workers who are coming to Britain. The reason is it is keeping a huge stress on the financial resources of the Britain. And in Britain, unemployment allowances are available. For example, a person from East Europe, if he migrates into Britain, as per the existing European Union standards, Britain shall also extend the benefits which are being given to its citizen to these immigrants from other countries of the European Union. So this is leading to something called welfare tourism, where the people coming from the other countries to gain this unemployment allowances, etc. So Cameron proposes for a hold for 4 years on these issues. Now, what the European Union says that let us keep a provision for an emergency brake. It means that the UK, if it shows that it is causing a strain on its financial and administrative apparatus, then European Union collectively can make a decision on that particular issue rather than it being made at the national level. And next is sovereignty issues. Now the national parliament shall have the right to block the European Union legislations. It means United Kingdom supports for a red card system in which any directive given by European Union will not be directly applicable to the the UK, and where UK Parliament will make an ultimate decision. And next, coming to the intellectual property rights regime. So here there are three terms we need to understand. One is called compulsory licensing. Now the Westerners, they object to this compulsory licensing. It means as and when required, the government of India to protect the public health or to provide for the various meeting the needs of the emergency, the Indian government can allow for the other companies other than the patent holder to produce a particular drug or particular material. Now, this compulsory licensing is also part of our national manufacturing policy. It means that not just the drugs, now we can also produce for something else using the compulsory licensing. And next is evergreening of patents. In India, an additional filter exists. Now, a patent has to be revived or reviewed or extended. Then it has to pass an additional layer that of scrutiny that is called its therapeutic utility. It means unless it shows a therapeutic efficiency, we are not going to extend the patents. So these two are the challenges for the West. West. On the other hand, the new policy is also intended to bring in utility patents for discoveries which are being made or small inventions that are being made in informal sector. And Gitmo closure, the Guantanamo Bay has become with the human rights violations are synonymous with the human rights violations of United States of America, and President Obama proposes for the closure of this particular prison. Now, the public officials are allowed to travel to the foreign countries which are being sponsored by the international agencies and the foreign governments. Till now it was absent. Why it's a worry now? Now the lobbying is increasing in India. So in this case, these foreign trips and tours sponsored by some international agencies can become an incentive, and it can become an indirect benefit which is being offered to the public officials to make the favorable decisions. In this context, when the government is seeking more accountability from NGOs and other parts, why is it allowing its public officials to take up the foreign tours and these inducements is a question. So however, it's a controversy which is going on between different departments and we have to see where it moves on. So these are the news for today. Thank you very much.